This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Smile, the makers of the brand new PDF Pen 6, PDF Pen Pro 6, and PDF Pen for iPad and PDF Pen for iPhone. Find out more about all the flavors of PDF Pen at smilesoftware.com. Welcome to MacVoices. This is a talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, a little while ago, well, depending on how you measure it, as I measured it's just a couple minutes ago, but as you measure it, maybe a little longer than that, we talked to Jeff Carlson about his new book, iPad for Photographers. But that's not all Jeff is doing with digital photography and all the stuff surrounding it. He's also doing a very different kind of project for Take Control books called Take Control of Your Digital Photos, which is something that I need help with badly. So, Jeff, welcome back. It's great to see you again, even though we just did this.
Thank you. It's been so long.
It has been. It has been. No, don't do that. They'll take us off YouTube.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Jeff, take control of your digital photos. This is something that we talked about the problems or the challenges, I guess, of taking more photos with our iDevices. But we're taking more photos of all kinds. And I find myself hesitant to even delete anything because I guess I'm still in that print mentality where I shot it, so I need to keep it. And I know that's not the case, but this is something that it can chew up your hard drive. It can chew up a lot of disk space very quickly. We really need to get a handle on this stuff. So before we get to all that, though, let's talk about exactly how this project is playing out, because it is a little bit different for Take Control.
Yeah, it's an experiment that has worked really well so far. I'm really looking forward to that, to continuing it. So what we're doing is, and normally, as I'm sure your viewers are aware, Take Control releases ebooks that are a PDF of the entire book. So what we're doing differently here is we're serializing it. So we're releasing basically a chapter a week. And I'm still writing the book, and over the course of about 8 weeks, right now there are 8 chapters, we will have released the entire book online, and then once that's done, then we'll wrap it up into a sort of more traditional ebook that can be purchased as one volume. That would be a PDF, Kindle, all the different formats that Take Control supports. So it's interesting, partially because we're breaking it up, and there are a couple of good reasons for that. One, it allows us to get it in front of people right away, and what's been nice is as we've published the chapters, we've published 3 so far. As we write, or as we speak, there are 3 chapters. What's nice is that readers are able to give feedback, and it's been great hearing what questions they have, and also sort of getting a sense of what people are interested in reading about. So, for example, we had a few commenters who are really interested in, like, how do you incorporate GPS data, and how do you capture GPS data that so you can take that location and combine it with your photos if you're not using a device like an iPhoto that automatically captures that, which was always in the outline, but I think I'm going to end up expanding that or going into a little more detail because there's more interest in it. So there's that active give and take with readers. So rather than just going, all right, here is the book is written and it's out there in the world, it can be a little more organic and interactive, so to speak, before the book is actually finished. Now, there's a little bit of a catch, but it's a good catch, and that is that the first chapter is free for anybody to read. To read the rest of the book, the rest of the chapters, you have to be a TidBITS member. And I'm sure, I would imagine Adam and Tanya have talked about being about TidBITS memberships on your podcast before. But basically, becoming a TidBITS member, you're paying some amount of money per year, and that gives you all sorts of benefits. You're supporting TidBITS, which I've worked for TidBITS for I just figured out 16 years or so. Or more. Anyway, TidBITS has been around since before the web existed. So just to give you some context, and we publish great Mac news and information. So you're supporting TidBITS. We have a bunch of different sponsors who've offered 30% off, 20% off discounts on products that you use, like LaunchBar or Text Expander, things like that. And so you get to view the site without ads, like typical membership things. And so what we're doing with this Take Control book is, we want more people to become TidBITS members, and as extra incentive, you can read this book as it's being published. If you don't want to become a TidBITS member, that's fine. You can wait until the whole thing is done and then purchase the book. But we would really like to see people become TidBITS members, to read my book, obviously, but also because it supports TidBITS and helps us do things like this. So, perhaps there'll be other Take Control books that will take this model. And, if you become a member now, then you get access to those books too. So...
Just one quick advertisement. Some of the discounts that Adam and Tanya have negotiated and make available to you as a TidBITS member, they pay for the membership right there.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind any of the rest of it. But it's really important to support people who are creating good quality content. And TidBITS is right up there with, at the top of the barrel with some of the best content created on the web. So I've would suggest that it's a good thing to do. If you find value in quality content, go do it.
Yeah. So yes, that was a big long advertisement for TidBITS. But I mean, that's also kind of the point. Like we're experimenting with something like this that yes, I could have just written a book and made it available, but this is what we're doing now. Like it's interesting and it's dynamic, and it very much follows the idea of TidBITS, like interacting with our readers and the people who have supported us for years, and have been reading TidBITS, back even when it was published in C-text, or heaven forbid, a few people will know that it was originally a hypercard stack. And so far, I don't have any specific figures, but from what I've been able to discern from Adam, we have had a good response, new memberships and such, which I believe is because we're doing this experiment. So that's very cool.
One last thing for TidBITS. I just find it fascinating, all the experiments and everything that you and Joe Kissel and Adam and Tanya and the whole TidBITS crew have been doing around information publishing. And I'm not even going to say ebook publishing, but just information publishing in general, ways to interact that are a little bit beyond the social networks, that require someone to get a little more involved. And it's not like you're out there with a sword sticking them, but maybe allowing them to become a little more involved. Are you finding that it's creating a lot more work, Jeff, as you write the book sort of on the go, or is it the kind of work that is welcome because it's what you deliver, what the kind of things people want to hear from?
Yes and no. In terms of like the content of the book, I'm not doing any extra work because it's stuff that I would have had to sort of piece together and sort through and figure out like how best to take control of your photos and the different steps and the important things like all of that is sort of the regular process of writing a book and testing and all of that. Where there has been a lot more work sort of front loaded is this has also given Adam and Tanya and Joe a good opportunity to basically figure out, okay, if we're going to have something that is going to be published on the web, like how do you do that? Because normally take control books are written in Apple's Pages application and then turned into a PDF. Like there's that kind of straight line. And I say that if Adam's listening to this, he's probably guffawing because he knows that it's not a straight line. There are all sorts of different things, but from the author's perspective, it's a straight line. I don't know. And so having a conversion required from taking it from manuscript and then making that available in a form that can be easily put into our content management system in Markdown, so that it gets converted to HTML. Like there are a lot of sort of thorny issues about dealing with styles and tips and figures and all of that. And so what's interesting about this about my book is that it's basically enabled them to build this system from scratch so that they can do this in the future. So they're like figuring things out now and smoothing it out so that, like, let's say Joe wants to write his next Take Control book and they want to serialize it like this, like it'll be a lot easier. So I mean, I know that's all sort of behind the scenes, but it's fascinating because TidBITS and Take Control, like, they've never been tied into like a big legacy media publishing company, and that has a lot of advantages. You don't have to figure out, like, if we do something experimental, is that going to alienate the salespeople in this department? So you can be more flexible and try new ideas and really figure out, like, this whole electronic publishing landscape. There's so many facets of it and so many areas and niches to take advantage of, that we can do that without having to follow like a traditional model. So it's really interesting and really kind of, I don't know, follows the ethos of TidBITS all along, which is, we have good information. How do we get it out to people, and how do we do that in ways that people are going to be interested? One interesting comment that we've gotten recently as part of this, like we heard from somebody who said, I love Take Control books. I've bought many of them, but there are some of them that I find that I just haven't made it all the way through. I'll read part of it and then get busy or whatever. And so, like, this person really liked the fact that, like, here was one chapter of this book that he could read, and then next week there'll be another chapter, and sort of help them actually get through it. Not that any of the other content was boring or dull or anything like that. It's just, sometimes when you're faced with a large slice of reading or work to do, it's a little more difficult to get through it versus, oh, well, I can just spend 20 minutes and read this article now and bookmark it and view it whenever I want because I'm a member, than to think, oh, right, if I got to like page 40 on the PDF and now I have to go find it or whatever. So like that's really interesting because we are catering to different reading styles. So that's neat too.
So that's a lot about the book. Let's get into, because we could talk about that all day, because I really do think it's an interesting model, and it's fascinating. It so fits TidBITS, and the
Yeah.
people behind TidBITS, the authors and the publishers. But let's talk about taking control of my digital photos, because I really,
that's right.
I need help, Jeff. I really need help. Where do I even start in sort of an organizational fashion to take control of all this stuff that I have? I want to keep relatively organized, and I want to keep it for a long time.
Yeah. Well, first you need to take the professional approach is hire 10 assistants and make them do it. No.
That's all the time we have, folks.
Okay, thanks. Bye. So where to start? It's surprising because taking control of digital photos, it can be an impossibly large subject, which has been kind of one of the great challenges for me is, yes, we all know how to import photos and, dump them into iPhoto or Aperture or Lightroom or something like that. But then what? Too often, it gets in there, that's good because you have them somewhere, but then you want to do something with them later. And later can be I want to do something with them in an hour, or I want to be able to pull up a specific photo or find a set of photos in 9 months from now. And there have been different ways that apps have tried to solve this problem, usually by date. So for example, you can just scroll through your photo library by date. And so if you know that, I think it was maybe the second week of August last year that we went to Disneyland, or maybe it was in July, I'd have to go look at my calendar, blah, 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 all of that. And that sort of stuff accretes. It builds on itself until finally you're like, I know I have a fantastic photo of Chuck at Macworld, but it would take me so long to find it that I'm not even going to bother. We just throw our hands up because we're drowning in photos. So what I've set out to do is how can we take control of this, and also make it so that it's not going to be this giant burden on you to organize your photos. And so my approach is heavy on having metadata. When I say metadata, I mean keywords and ratings and things like that help describe your photos, but doing it in a smart way so that it doesn't seem painful. So what you would typically do is you would import all your photos, and then you would sit down and start rating them. For example, this is a 2-star app, this is a 3-star app this is a photo. Sort of picking out what's good and what's bad. That's kind of normally that's the first basic step of organization, because you want to find your good photos and ignore the ones that are either outright bad or just kind of so-so. Well, if you just dump everything in and then not really do anything with it and just sort of trust that it'll all be there, you'll never do that. I mean, I'm sure that some people would go back and maybe obsessively go and tag and rate things, but we're all busy and we're all taking more photos, and so pretty soon you're back to that stage of, I've got all these photos and I don't know how to find anything. And so the approach that I emphasize is do a lot of that in such a way that the computer is handling it. So, for example, in Lightroom, you can apply a lot of metadata during the import step. So importing doesn't just have to be the transfer of bytes from the memory card to your computer. You can add all sorts of things. You can add keywords. You can insert important metadata about like your contact information, copyright information, things like that. You can even apply star ratings there. And what that does is it lets you import your batch. Let's say you just shot 500 photos. You can set. I'll back up. Let's say, to go back to my other example, you were just at Disneyland. You have 500 photos, and it's likely that since they're all sort of in the same theme, that you would assign keywords like Disney, Disneyland, theme park, vacation, those sorts of things that would apply to all your photos. That can all be done by the software as you import, rather than you having to go back and remember to do it later. So basically, by setting up a few templates, by entering keywords before anything is actually transferred in your import window, you're adding valuable information, so that when the actual transfer happens, all of that information gets applied to your photos, and just right there, you have dramatically made it easier for you to find those photos later, because you can just type in a search box, type Disneyland or type Macworld, and that instantly cuts down your photo library from maybe 10,000 photos to 600 photos or something like that.
This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by Smile, the makers of great utilities like Text Expander Touch, PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPhone, PDF Pen for iPad, and Disk Label. We're talking about Text Expander, one of my absolute favorite must-have go-to utilities for being more productive. Text Expander lets you type a short user-assigned abbreviation and paste in all sorts of text, images, and more. So how do you get started? There are some built-in snippets to help you get the idea. Things like date and time snippets that are obvious. But you want to dig in yourself. So what are some of the first snippets you should create? How about your email signature? If you have more than one, or want more than one, to use for your business, your personal projects, or something else, set each one up, then trigger the abbreviation at the end of your email, and you're not locked into the capabilities of your email program. Or maybe your name and address. There are still times you need to type that, and not in a form on a website. Or maybe the Declaration of Independence. Why? Just because. It's just that easy to take advantage of Text Expander. Once you stop and think about it, you'll be amazed at how often you'll want to create a snippet for a word or an entire page of text. Still not sure? Visit Smile at smilesoftware.com and download your free trial now. Set up some snippets, get in the habit, and you'll be hooked. You can buy direct from Smile or find Text Expander on the Mac App Store. Tell them MacVoices sent you. They know us. Text Expander. Type more with less effort. Thanks to Smile for supporting this edition of MacVoices. Okay, a couple questions. First of all,
Yeah. Please.
Yeah, you're
going. So
no, it's
Okay.
great, because it obviously shows you've thought a lot about this. When you're talking about importing them, are you talking about iPhoto? Or are you talking about Lightroom, Aperture, all of the above? What?
Yes, all of the above. So one of the big questions when we approached this was, am I writing a book that's just how to take control of your photos in Lightroom, or how to take control of them, in a certain application? And that would be too limiting. So in the current chapter that's online now, chapter 3, I basically walk through a number of different applications and list why they are good and where they might be weaker in terms of creating this sort of take control scheme. So, for example, Lightroom and Aperture are great because you can apply a lot of metadata. They have a lot of options for searching. You can do things like you can set up smart albums or smart collections so that you can I'm getting ahead of myself, or I'm like stumbling over myself because there's too much. So you can run searches based on this metadata that will quickly find things. And so rather than having to manually scan through all of your photos and maybe pick things into an album, you can let a smart album just pick out anything that says, all right, show me anything that has vacation. Show me anything that has been tagged with vacation that was shot using a Nikon D90, or show me all the photos from Disneyland that I shot with my iPhone. Those sorts of things. And so various applications have strengths in different areas that I talk about. iPhoto I include mostly because I think a lot of people use it, but it also falls down in a number of areas. Like, for example, it's sort of terrible about getting anything out of it. You can export, individual photos here and there, but if you want to make a switch to, say, Lightroom or Photoshop Elements or something like that, it's going to be really difficult because, for example, there's no way to export your ratings out of iPhoto. So if you spend a lot of time setting up, 1-star, 2-star, 4-star images, so that you could figure out which ones you like, which ones you don't, and you've decided that iPhoto is no longer for you, and I have other reasons for not really being great on iPhoto. You're kind of out of luck. There's not a real easy way to do that. So to answer your question, now that I've gone on 11 different tangents, I do mention a number of applications. I also mentioned a few that don't really work. So, for example, iView Media Pro is, or it's actually not called that anymore. It used to be called iView Media Pro. I think now it's just called Media Pro. I'm blanking at the moment, but anyway, it and some other applications are really good for importing and applying metadata and things like that, but they don't have a catalog capability where the app is handling your entire library in the way that my take control system works. So that's, I don't know. I think the takeaway from this part is that you can take control of your photos in so many different ways, and we had to figure out, okay, let's give a practical step-by-step scheme where you will be able to find your photos later and do it in a way that ensures that you're actually going to follow through with it. And so, because I think there are lots of technical ways of solving this problem, but I think the biggest problem is that you may not want to dig into all those technical ways. Like, you're a person and you have lots of other things to occupy your attention. You have family and friends and television and movies, and you don't want to have to either build some giant complex machine for handling your photos, but you also don't want to spend a whole lot of time doing repetitive tasks like keywording and things like that. So my book gives you a solution that will, sort of cover all the bases in in a way that is not going to be so taxing that you're going to throw up your hands and walk away. Does that make sense? I sort of feel like I've just like burped everything.
No, it's
giant brain dump, but yeah.
Well, and Jeff, I think that's what we kind of expect from a take control book. Not every option in the world, but a good practical approach
Yes.
to the problem at hand, which in this case is taking control of your digital photos. You did say something else though or you intimated there, and I'm not quite clear on it. One of the concerns I have about any of these programs, Lightroom, iPhoto, Aperture, whatever,
Yeah.
I spend all this time putting that keyword information in, and then somebody discontinues a program, somebody updates the program, or I just want to simply export some photos out. Mm-hmm. Do I have any options so that some of my metadata or all of my metadata goes with those photos in some fashion, or am I entering metadata in so that I'm now in Aperture and I'm going to live in Aperture until I'm a little old man?
Yeah. It depends on the tool. iPhoto, for example, is terrible about that right now, and I think that some of that came about because I think Apple's grander plan is either to move everyone to Aperture or something like it. I pretty firmly believe that the iPhoto we see now will be updated to be something that's probably closer to what iPhoto for iOS looks like in terms of some of its features. And also just because it's been quite a while since iPhoto has had a significant revision that I could be totally wrong because we're talking about Apple, but I have a feeling that the next iPhoto will probably be either a departure or at least different enough that what we have now will look pretty antiquated. But one of the things that Apple did with iPhoto, they changed it so that iPhoto and Aperture share the same catalog format. So you can open an iPhoto library in Aperture and an Aperture library in iPhoto back and forth, and that's great if you want to end up in Aperture. If you'd rather use Lightroom, then that becomes a lot more difficult from going from iPhoto to Lightroom. So part of the one criteria that I talk about is, is it likely that this application is gonna stay around? And so like right now, Lightroom is the big heavy hitter. Aperture is also very good, but I think has a much smaller market share. But it does have a lot of the features that you want, and both of them are both much more affordable than they used to be. Which also makes it more reasonable that somebody who's not a pro will jump into one of these things that are a little bit more complex. But what's nice about them is that they do have the facility so that if you decide that you're done with one program, you want to use another, you can export that data, whether it's stuff that's been written into the file. So like with JPEGs, a lot of that metadata is just written to the file itself. Or if you shoot RAW photos, that information appears as a separate little sidecar file. And if you're moving to an application that is, at least half smart, it will be able to read those things and apply that data and make it so that you haven't wasted a lot of that time. So there's always that possibility that maybe Apple says, we made a good go of the pro photography market, and we're just not going to do it anymore because it's Apple. Then I don't think that you would be completely screwed. I think it would be inconvenient, but there are ways to get things out of that and into something else. I don't know. There's also that aspect of, all the software we use right now is fleeting. It's not going to be, working in 5 or 10 years, whether it's, we're using different versions of the same software or what. So you sort of have to dig into what works for you now and hope that it's still, is supported, and doesn't completely lock you in. What's nice about these, and another thing that I talk about in the book, is like if you look at iPhoto, another reason that I'm not real crazy about iPhoto is because it stores everything in one giant file. Basically, it's a package file, or a package folder in the Finder. So you can dig into it, but like it has a kind of a complex hierarchy. In Lightroom or Aperture, you can easily say, all right, like, yes, I want this application to manage my catalog and track all that stuff, but I want it to store all my files in specific locations. And so you can specify that, like for me, I have, like a photos folder, and that's broken down by date. So there's like a 2013 folder, and within that there's a, the subfolders that are organized by date, and those your image files just get saved there as files. So if the unthinkable happens, let's Aperture gets killed by Apple, Adobe decides they don't want to do it either, and they kill Lightroom, like you still have all those files and at least some way of exporting that metadata so that you can then rebuild somewhere else. I mean, that's kind of the apocalyptic view, but you have flexibility, which is good.
I don't know that's apocalyptic, Jeff. I think you just said something that cuts across digital photos and productivity software and pretty much everything we all use, that in 4 years we're not going to be using the same stuff. I see people that try to do it, and good for them, but they're limiting themselves in a big way. And 4 years from now, I don't want to be limited by my choice. I made the jump a little while ago from, well, maybe more than a little while ago, from iPhoto to Aperture, and have been very happy because Aperture feels enough like iPhoto, and it makes enough sense that I didn't feel completely lost.
Yes.
But it also has a lot more powerful features. And I'm certainly not a power user of this kind of software, but I can grow a little bit into it, and I really like that. And I would hope that wherever I end up in 4 years, I can continue that process and not lose a lot of the time and information and photos I've already poured into it.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think the approach that I've taken, again, I use Lightroom and Aperture as examples a lot because they're sort of they do most everything that I want an organization system to do right now, but wow, I just totally lost the train of my thought. See, the problem is there's too much. It's that you can take the steps that I talk about, and even though it's using Lightroom and Aperture heavily in examples, the concepts behind them are sort of more fundamental, which is rate things smartly, apply keywords and other metadata to make it easier for you to locate things later, and then be able to do various things to do searches and make searching easier. Like those things are sort of core features that any good application that manages photos will be able to do. So, if you have those basics down, you can mostly, insert application A or application B to take control of the whole scheme versus like, oh, well, I'm going to move to this program now and I'm starting over from scratch because it's so foreign or whatever. But what the goal of my book is basically to say, okay, like this is something that's possible. It's not an impossible task. And when you have these core ideas and I explain like, why keywording is important and why you want to, rate things the way you do, then that will apply to any good software. Does that make sense? I hope.
Yeah. No.
Good. Okay.
I think what you're trying to say or saying is that above a certain level, there's almost certainly always going to be a path, because the expert software has a number of things in common, and maybe they don't have the same features, but at the base level. And of course, the other thing, there's a practical side to this. Software manufacturers are always going to be looking, because this is one area where that you have a lot of legacy data to move, and people don't want to lose this stuff. So they're going to find a way to help you migrate it over. And that may be whistling in the dark too, but I don't think so, because there's a financial motive, and that's always a good incentive for people to solve problems.
Oh, definitely. And I think also just the fact, as we started with, like everyone is taking digital photos and they all have to do something with them. And so it's not like you're chasing like a specific audio market, which can be a lucrative market, and they have, specific needs. Like nearly everybody has to do something with all these photos, and they may do nothing. They may just have it in a big virtual pile that they go sort through whenever they need to find something. But right now I dare say it's kind of a perpetual market that's always growing, and so there will be software developers who try to come into that market, and whether that's doing real basic stuff or doing like real high-end stuff. What's interesting, another thing that I had to sort of draw a line when it came to the book was a lot of the stuff that I recommend is not necessarily what a professional would do, because some professionals, like if they're doing a lot of client work, like they'll have like a very specific file naming structure, because they have to be able to immediately look at a series of images or a list of image file names and know who the client is, what shoot it was from, what date, like all of that. And so there are some things that like pros will do that are sort of above and beyond what I describe, that wasn't worth including in this book, because like a professional who is shooting 4,000 photos of a pro football game already has a system, either that he or she has developed or is dictated by the publishing company or whatever. Like those are real specific issues, and what my goal is, like there are a lot of people who they want control of their photos, they want to be able to find things later, and they don't want to hit that wall of frustration that says, oh, like why did I not spend more time keywording these things? Well, from here forward, here's a way that you can, avoid that frustration level later by doing a little tiny bit of work up front that pays off really well down the line.
This is an interesting experience. I don't think I've ever interviewed someone who has half written the book or is in the process of writing the book. So
I don't know what I'm saying.
Yeah. So let me jump ahead and maybe we can wrap up with this topic.
Okay.
I think it's an area where I know some people have tried it. They've not abandoned, but they've used one of the online services as their way to archive and organize photos, be it Flickr, SmugMug, wherever. And part of that appeals to me because, first of all, it's offsite, so it's the classic, offsite backup situation. I know, don't write in, folks. I know Flickr, I know SmugMug are not backups, but they can sort of serve that purpose. But is it a good idea for us to send our photos out there and use some of those organizational tools, or should that just be a redundancy that we use and really keep them organized on our drives and our Drobos and our whatever our local storage media is?
Yeah, that's a great question, and just from my experience and my research, I think those services are great as redundancy. Well, as redundancy on one hand, and then on the other hand, for like specific sharing uses. So, for example, you will have some really good photos that you may want people to just see your good photos. So perhaps you'll upload those to 500px. Technically, yes, that does give you a backup of those images, but you're really doing that because you want to, have an online portfolio, or you want to, show off like your collection of photos from a specific vacation to family members or whatever. So in that respect, those are good to have. Certainly, if you have something like Dropbox, for example, has a feature, and I think Google now does, and basically anything that you import onto your computer gets copied to your Dropbox folder and gets uploaded. So you just have that archive there, and that's great. But that's kind of like a thing on the side that is like second or third last ditch option. So if your computer melts down completely and your backups melt down completely, you still have that. Like there is that. The problem with these services right now is they don't really handle any of the metadata, the rating, and all of that other valuable data that you apply to it that's valuable to you. So then you're sort of back with, okay, here's this big batch of photos again. So like they have their place, but right now they don't work as well in a system of having your library, your local library, and the data that you assign to it, and your ratings and things like that. So I think the best approach is to have a good backup system of everything, like not just your photos, like, because obviously like all of your data is valuable. And so if you have a good comprehensive backup system, that takes care of that. And you also have those other things that are a last line of defense, and also have the specific sharing features. But they don't fit really well yet into a like comprehensive, this is my library. They're still sort of, this is my photo library, and here's some Flickr things, and there's a photo stream, and because they haven't been designed as that sort of big solution yet. The specification for these things are iCloud Photo Stream is, okay, you want to easily be able to view your photos on any device you have, and it does that. Well, that doesn't really address ratings and keywords and all of that. And I think largely because most people don't bother with that. And my argument is their lives will be much better if they do address that. And here are some steps to make that as easy as possible, and yet still pay off dividends down the line.
I think it's a great point. You've really hammered on the keyword stuff, and I think that's important because we've all, at one point or another, inherited a shoebox or two or 20 or 30 full of photos, yeah. And you look back and you think, gee, I wonder who that is. Mm-hmm. For people that were born long before you and I were, and most of the listeners, and just sure, they used to write some things on the back of the photos, but a lot of times they didn't. So I find myself very aware of that in looking back at old family photos and saying, gee, I wonder who that is. Is that, a member of the family for 3 or 4 generations back, or is it just a friend? So putting some of this in, and I don't think I'd really appreciated the fact that the online services didn't address some of the keywords and all unless you put them in yourself in the service, and that's just double work. So why do it?
Right. Let's take Flickr for a quick example. Flickr is good about taking your keywords and applying them depending on where you're exporting it from. So if you import your photos into Lightroom and you have keywords that are automatically applied to it, and then you share that using Lightroom's built-in Flickr publish service, then like that data gets appended to your Flickr photo, and so like you have the keywords there, and all you had to do was enter that information the first time as you were importing it, and then maybe you'll also change the title of it so that on Flickr it doesn't show up as IMG_1234. Maybe you give it a little title, but you don't necessarily do that for all your photos. And so just by doing a little bit of work up front, then you don't have to think about, how can I find this later in Flickr or wherever, because that information, which turns out to be valuable information, is already there. And you can move on to do the next thing. And the next thing can be reviewing more photos or going out to dinner. So, that sort of savings in time and energy, and just sort of mental energy too. So you don't feel like there's this giant weight of photos just waiting for you to go through. Like you're handling it in a small piecemeal way that smooths out the process. And honestly, like we're talking about digital photos, these are the things that you took for a reason, because you had a good time or you saw something beautiful or something interesting. Like that's fun. And you want to have all of this metadata, but you still want to have fun, because you still want to be able to look through and look at your photos and go, oh, wow, like that was a great day, or that was a beautiful sunset. And not look at your photos and go, oh, God, I'm never going to get through these, And it's a psychic weight. And so, like photos are fun. And I think trying to tackle them sometimes makes it not fun. And if I can make them more fun and still make them useful, then 10 times the better.
I think that's a great tagline for this interview. Photos are fun. They should be fun, and you don't want to make them work. Why would you want to make them work? There's few things I enjoy more than sharing my photo library over to my Apple TV and just letting it cycle through. And you're right. It's like, oh yeah, that was a lot of fun, or that was a great event, or I haven't thought of that person in a long time. Mm-hmm. And so the more things you can do with this, the more ways you can make it accessible. Because again, going back to those shoeboxes always seem to end up, in the basement, in the attic, buried under an old coat, and then you pull them out 20 years later, and it's a real waste. When there's so many ways now we can share them or just enjoy them ourselves easily.
Yeah. In fact, it's great that you brought up the shoebox, because that's how I opened the first chapter, the free chapter that people can read, because like you knew that you could turn the photo over and there would probably be some information, a little bit, or the date or whatever. With photos, if you do nothing to them, the information you're going to get is, this was a 4,000 by 2,000 pixel image shot by a Nikon D90 with an aperture of f2.8. And like, well, that's not exciting. What's interesting is like who's that person in the back there that looks really familiar? And so that sort of information you can impart.
Agreed. Jeff, ordinarily at this point in the interview, I'd say, well, how much is the book? But the book is not finished yet, so you probably don't know. But you can become a TidBITS member at various levels. You'll get access to this. Go definitely check out the first chapter for free, whether you're a member or not. Then decide to sign up and move on. And I know it sounds like an advertisement, folks, but I guess it is, but it really isn't, just because this is supporting great content, not just Jeff's book, but TidBITS as well.
Definitely.
So, Jeff, what did you say? 8 chapters? So about 8 weeks.
Yeah. So chapter 4 is scheduled to come out on Monday, and so I figure sort of mid-August, unless there's a hiccup, or if we decide to run 2 chapters one week. That's not really in my control. But yeah, that's the plan. Possibility, going back to the sort of dynamic nature of it, there's a possibility of doing an extra chapter or an appendix just based on a few things that the people have brought up that are like, I'd really like to know more about this, which is something that I thought would have this much interest, a little tiny bit of interest. And there seems to be more. So it might end up being 9 chapters. We'll see, but for right now, although the whole thing isn't written, it's all extensively outlined, and so we're not completely making it up as we go along.
Well, the other point I wanted to make is that this is a great summer project. It's the kind of thing you can do piecemeal. You can kind of look forward to the next chapter coming out. So you're only 3 chapters behind now, which is not a huge weight. Go do that, and then follow along a little bit. And by the time September comes, you'll have all your photos organized and know exactly what you're doing going forward. Yeah, definitely. And I should also point out, we're not trying to make this a 1,000-page book or anything like that. I've written 1,000-page books. They're horrific to have to do and to read too.
Yeah. So it's very much designed to be engaging and not taxing, and really give the essential information to take control of your photos. So.
Well, this book, or this project, or both, is Take Control of Your Digital Photos. And of course, in an earlier interview, we talked with Jeff about his new book, iPad for Photographers. So if you have an iPad and you're interested in this kind of thing from a little different angle, go check both the book and that interview out. Jeff, it's great to see you. This has been a really long, fun, protracted conversations, and I've had a good time. I've learned a bit, and I'm looking forward to learning more as the project progresses.
Good. I'm glad. I'm having a lot of fun writing it. So that's, it's interesting and fun to do, which are the best projects.
Absolutely. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. He's Jeff Carlson. His tagline is "Photos should be fun." So don't forget that. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and for more Apple, Mac, and tech-related shows, including MacVoices, Mac Notables, the Mac Jury, and the MacVoices Briefing. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com.